welcome back. So since the previous lesson, what I have done here is I have removed the masking fluid. What I like to do usually to remove the masking fluid is I usually use an eraser or rubber if you're from the UK, that's what I'm used to. And I will remove the oh my gosh, the masking fluid from this painting now. And as you can see, there's a lot of hard lines that I will want to soften later. And just as a reminder, your eye will naturally be drawn to hard lines. So as we evaluate the painting throughout the process, we will decide which lines we want to soften and which ones we want to keep hard. For example, I might keep some of these lines here in her hair a little bit hard to just kind of bring a little light and shine to and a little spark to the painting. So I want to preserve these. And as well, since the last lesson, I have also erased a lot of the pencil lines that were still visible in the painting. So as we approach approach the near the end of the painting, we'll be able to evaluate the painting a lot better without those lines. At least it will be for me. As well, during from the last lesson to the beginning of this, what I usually like to do is I like to take a photo of the painting at its stage, and I will compare the painting to the photo reference. And here, this allows me to evaluate what needs to be sharpened, what needs darkening, what needs to be pushed back and brought forward in the painting. So evaluating the painting so far, I can see that there's areas around her ear that I can push back, and around here is her dress. I want to add a little bit more variation and atmospheric perspective and depth here. Pushing back this part of her dress, maybe cooling it down and darkening the values, and then maybe bringing up a little bit of warmth in this area where I can imagine the light maybe just grazing the top part of her dress there. And don't forget, warm colors tend to move towards you, and cool colors tend to push back. That's a part of like the atmospheric perspective. If you think about a landscape, especially in an area that I lived, the further the mountain, the bluer it looks, and the closer things are, the more warm things are. So closer towards towards your yellows and reds, you'll be able to see. As well, in this lesson, we'll also be looking at really looking at the focal points here. For me, I like to keep my darkest values at the focal point. So usually, again, if you could think of a three-pronged plug, I'm going to make sure that I have my darkest values in her eyes here, where I imagine the shadows are. I'm going to maybe add a little bit more of my blackest blacks, or without using black, my darkest darks around her nose there. And I got some room to build up around here as well, just my darker darks. This will really help bring your focal point to that. But I also want to be able to balance that out. So I'll be incorporating a few well-used darks in the background elements and the contextual parts of the painting to kind of balance it so that you don't basically see three black dots right on her face there. So just remembering it's all about balance, but also remembering that the details, the finer blacks really need to be on her face. That I don't want to bring up too much tiny dark dark details in the background there, because then it's gonna draw the attention away from her face, if that's or the subject's face, which I want to be the focal point. Additional to that, we'll also, if we have time in this part of the section, we're going to be looking at how we're going to add some details, some fine details to the hair. For that, what I might do, I might actually bring my Eradicator brush. This is a small synthetic brush with pretty hard bristles. It's good for scrubbing out. You can use any short head synthetic to do this. I don't have an example, but maybe I can pull out a brush here. I don't really use a lot of synthetic brushes, but I have a couple of small brushes that I haven't used. But if you don't have the Eradicator brush by Rosemary, you can maybe try with some smaller brushes like that. And I recommend something that's synthetic and a little bit stiff. And what else? I think that's about it as a demo. Yeah, so let's dig into her eyes there. I'm just gonna make this a little bit bigger. So for this, I think what I want to do, I want to kind of keep it a little bit warm, and I can see around the edges there's this warmth in the eyes there for me. So I'm gonna try and keep this. I'm just using this mix, I think, of ultramarine and burnt orange. But what I might do, I might just throw in somewhere a little bit of that sea blue black. For this, I want to not use too much water. I did just wake up my palette here by just spritzing it with a little bit of water, so it may be a little bit too much water, but let's have a go anyway and see what we can do. So just a little bit of sea blue black in that ultramarine and burnt orange. Something to note about eyes, it's not so obvious in the reference photo here, but you're gonna get a lot of shadow right on the upper eyelid, typically. So I do like to try and keep that a little bit darker than the rest of the eye. And another thing is to focus and remember that the eye is round. So to keep things nice and round, I'm gonna try and add some of my darks here in the corner. I can see as well when I compare it, I can really just really bring in darken up the values on her anchor points there and bring up the detail around here. And there's a lot of room for depth around her mouth there. So we're gonna just start off, well, I'm gonna start off with eyes. And I can also see that I need to really bring in a little bit more values in her eyebrows there, just to kind of bring her definition. And as we move into the face, a little bit of room over here to bring up some depth. So let's go. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so I can see the details I need to add here. So I'm using my size 4, so I think it's a half rigger by Rosemary. Just adding some of the darks here. Usually just on that corner there. Not doing too much. Also want to try and make sure things are kept soft, and also keeping room for confusion. Eyelashes, you don't really see much here, but if you, I never want to draw it too much, like every single hair, but sometimes it's good just to kind of give an impression of it. So making sure there's some broken lines, and a couple of, basically for the eyelashes, I'm kind of making a line, leaving a space, and then drawing a line again. It just kind of keeps the painting alive, and you don't and so it doesn't become too stiff. I might just go straight into the sea blue black there again on her other eye. Another thing to note about eyes is that usually on the edge of the iris, it's going to be a little bit darker. And then you've got the darks in the pupil there. I've gone in quite dark, but there's an interesting book by, oh gosh, the same person that wrote Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. Maybe I'll try to remember to write that in the show notes. But she wrote another book called Drawing from the Dominant Eye. And usually in a painting, there's always going to be a dominant eye. I'm just using a wet brush, by the way, to just soften some edges that I want to keep soft. Now, if I can remember correctly, I think usually, is it? Oh, you know, I can't remember, but one eye is one, so her left eye is connected to the right side of her brain, and the right side of the brain tends to be the more emotional, not emotional, that's wrong, but abstract thinking. Yeah, it can be emotional. It's the part of the brain that looks at less logical, less verbal. And if you study, like, I think it's Vermeer or some of the old masters, you can see that focusing on the left side think about which eye you focus on when you talk to someone. Usually, if you want to reason with someone, you will focus on their right eye, which is associated to the left side of the brain. But if you want to appeal to someone's heart, you would sometimes bring the focus onto their left eye. And so, really great book, really interesting read. I think you can do it in a day, but definitely something to give you pause for thought when you're doing your portraits. The girl with the pearl earring is an example of a portrait where I think the larger focus of the eye is the person's left eye, her left eye. There you go, so just adding that little bit of depth. For her nose, I'm not going to want to use the browns, but before we do that, let's look at her eyebrows. I'm using this mix here of, I believe it's, I think it's the Serpentine and the burnt orange here. It's going to bring some definition to her eyebrows. I'm going to try and preserve that white highlight there as well. And use a clean brush just to soften out edges and bleed out. Bleed out areas. I'm going to try and preserve that highlight there of her hair across her eyebrows. And it's something really pretty to try and keep. Go into that area. Oh, there's another little highlight. It's fun there. Eyebrows should look like sisters, not twins. Well, I'm making rules, but those are the rules that I think of. You don't have to think of it the same way, but those are some of my personal guiding principles. I'm going to capture some of the details as well, just so that darkness in her hair. Something I personally focus on as an artist is not, especially when you're doing something that you want to keep alive and loose, is just think of breaking up those lines. It kind of gives this illusion of light moving through, and too many lines, hard lines in a painting can really stiffen up, and I want her to look like she's moving. I might actually soften some of these lines over, and I might break up this hard bit of highlight there with just a quick another line. Just moving that clean brush through there again, just trying to keep things soft. And so you have some hard lines mixed in with some soft lines there. That's how I like to add details. I don't want to go too crazy though. Too many lines will, again, like I said, draw the attention away from the face. I just want to, but I do want to give a sense of hair moving around in her beautiful curls. And I'm just adding a couple of little strokes to complement the wash. I'm not drawing every single line, but I'm trying to keep this movement of hair that's just going across her face there. And since as I mentioned, she does have some warmer shadows on the edges of her eyes there that I want to capture, I'm going to bleed those out. And along here as well, I can also, something to think about, are those shadows warm or cool shadows? That will really help build a lot of dynamic in your paintings. I'm going to just build up the values here as well a little bit. There we go. And so I'm building up some of the values here that I can see. I'll just kind of give her face that character in that. There you go. This warm color I'm going to actually also bring into her nose. Just kind of darker here. It's not a dark, like a black dark, but it is a dark. So I personally would not advise to reach for your blacks every time you want to create a shadow. If you want to create a shadow, you don't need to use black all the time, especially in portraiture. Putting black on a face can really kill the life of the painting. Just got a little kind of, not quite a dimple, but a warm shadow here, right? Soften up the edge a little. And it's a little green, but I've gone overboard with the green, so just making sure that because the face is round, the corners of a mouth are typically a lot darker. So I'm gonna, and it's pretty warm around here. So just building up some of the definition in her lips there. If you look at lips, they're actually, lips are usually very soft unless you got your lips tattooed. So I'm just gonna reach in for my amethyst here for the corners. So I'm using amethyst for my darks here on the corners. But yes, yeah, have a good look at your lips in the mirror if you're, and you see that the line is actually pretty soft where your lips meet the rest of your skin. So unless you got them tattooed or have a lip liner on, and so I try to reflect that in my paintings as well. I'm going to bring up some of that amethyst that I have there just into that nostril. And just like that around here as well. Not too much. I might need to bring a little bit the these feel down. I'm just going to bleed it out because I don't want it to be too strong. I just realized I didn't have my microphone plugged in there. Again, I apologize. Hopefully you can hear me better a little bit now. And then I can also see that I just need to build up a little bit of depth and dimension just in this area here where her cheeks kind of meets, I don't know what you call it, her top lip, I suppose. It's a cooler shadow. So I'm reaching in for this mix of, I think it is Amethyst and Ultramarine. That's some Amethyst and Ultramarine. Just grab a bit more there. It has pink in it, so I'm just going to add a touch more of the Rhodonite there. I do typically try not to mix more than 3 colors together in watercolor. If I am to mix colors at all, it just runs the risk of muddying your colors, which you typically unless you're painting mud, don't want to do. I mean, there's no rules. These are just the principles in which I paint with. And bring that to the lips there. She has, I want to kind of capture that highlight a little bit more. I'm just using some of my Rhodonite, and it is warm, so I'm going to bring in some of these. Make sure I mix that in with some oranges, I suppose. Oh, bad, a little bit too much water, but try and capture that. And it's just a little bit darker around the edge of her lip, so just trying to keep that there. Just shadowed under her mouth. Giving some illusion to her teeth are not completely white, so I am just going to reach in some yellow. Oh, maybe not. Just soften up around here. I have to go back in for her teeth later. Too much water there right now to work with. Okay, so now those are some of the details of her face that we have kind of worked attention to. Just want to kind of define her chin a little bit more. So I'm going to grab some of this Serpentine and burnt orange mix. There is just a little bit more up right here. So I'm using I think this is a 4 or 6 and this is an 8 round. Because this ear I mentioned before needed to be pushed back. And this part needs to be darkened, but I do need to push that whole thing back, so just reaching in for that burnt orange and sepia, oh not sepia, serpentine mix. Ears do tend to be a little bit pinker, especially around the bottom there, so I kind of do want to capture that. Just the skin is kind of softer and blood moves down the face, so something to think about. I just want to capture that. As soon as my cheeks there. Yeah. as well. This ear needs to be taken down. I'm gonna use Amethyst for this ear. Just for those dark details. And I probably will need to bleed some of that out. I need to move into this red mix. Oh, I want to pick up some of those darks right in her side of her face there as well. It's very dark. Should make her ear pop out. I'm just bringing out my a brush to soften out some of those areas that I just painted in. And now I probably will need to go a little bit darker around here, but go. And what I might do is also just add a little bit of dark in there for her earring. This part, this phase of the painting is super fun, especially for those of you that might like details and drawing. It's always fun to add those little captures of detail. This part of her hair is super interesting. I don't know if you can see it, but there's not a lot of detail, but you can always use your imagination. But like I said, it's really dark in this area here. I'm gonna soften it out. But just capturing a sense of hair here, negative edge work we're doing, just kind of painting a little bit of movement where her hair catches the light and where there's like shadows. You can think of it as little triangles that you're doing. And usually a triangle where you bleed out one or two, well, one of the edges or so, kind of gives a sense of hair. There we go. Just adding in lines and bleeding out some of those edges, trying to keep things soft and airy. When you're doing hair, make sure you as another general guiding principle, move the brush in the way it's growing, and you want to be about as firm as think about emulating the texture and hardness of the hair with your brush. So if hair is soft, you want a light touch with your brush work. these are another general guiding principles in which I use to in my brushwork. So if she's a baby, a toddler, I want to kind of get the sense that she has soft, you know, soft, fair hair. I'm going to try and use soft brushwork. Another thing to think about is also where you're holding your brush. If I'm doing fine detail, and I might hold it close to the ferrule of the brush, but if I'm kind of doing hair and I want energy and movement, I might hold it towards the end there, and then I'm using my whole arm to for that movement. It's a lot of information I'm giving you, but you know, you develop these over time and practice. And personally, I feel like you're gonna get better. Better results if you do this way. Okay. So I'm just adding those details I see in the hair there. Grabbing my amethyst just for those little dark areas and just bleeding in. And making sure, I mean, something that adds interest to painting is just breaking up those lines. I can leave a gap and then, you know, leave gaps in the hair when you paint them in. And it will really get a sense that the light is just moving around and she's moving because she's alive. This white, I'm just gonna dull down a little bit. I can add like another little hair stroke here, for example. This is where you can use a little bit of our artistic license and imagine. You know, I don't want to do too much though, because it can go a little bit overboard, but this should help give a sense that hair is just everywhere. We'll come back to that technique a little bit more later, but just giving you a quick sense of it now. So you can add little line just right there into the highlight. Just a little bit of confusion on what's what, but work with the confusion if you're not sure. Adds a bit of mystery, makes people kind of, keeps them guessing, keeps your painting interesting. Let's add that dark thing. Just kind of brings out that little bit of hair. I'm gonna move back to, oh yeah, let's keep with our hair for now, since we're on the topic of hair. This part here, you can see that her hair is kind of like maybe tied back or something. You can work with these existing lines, and again, just when you do your lines, you be sure to leave gaps in between your lines. Don't draw out the lines full. It can make you draw the attention away from the focal point. I'm trying to work my wash here and add some movement. I'm gonna just add a bit more water. Kind of like just stroking the hair. And I'm trying to match the the hardness of which I'm applying the pressure on my brush with how soft I want her hair to be. Even when I do my lines, I will just run a clean brush through it, just to not to keep the texture, but also to add that softness. Another important tip is varying the colors of the hairs. You can see that these are more orangey shadows in her hair, but she also has some greenish shadows in her hair as well, so do you want to capture that. Ever so slightly. We are just kind of trying to give a sense of how her hair is forming as well, so I don't want to put too much. Detail work in the hair, but I do want to get a sense of movement and impression of how it's moving. Another thing to think about is for convincing hair is continuation. So I'm using the sepia green mixed with a little bit of oh gosh, what color is that? Help me out. Quin gold, and so I'm putting green on this side of the highlight and then negative edge work just underneath it, and that really helps give a sense that of continuation and harmony, and convincing shadows and convincing highlights. Again, this area is very greeny. It's reflecting off from the green around her. There's green shadows. Making sure I'm moving my brush in the direction of her hair. Always really important. Create a little bit of negative edge work, bring in that serpentine green, just grabs it just on that side, just to give that it brings out little highlights, right? And towards the edges. I want to make sure that the edges are, especially on the exterior of her hair, to be soft. I want there to be a lot of I want the subject to sit in with the painting. I don't want her to be a cut out of the painting. An example of an area here, you can see that this is a really hard line against her hair, and it draws a lot of attention, and it makes her look like a cutout. So I'm just using my Eradicator brush here, and I can, what I may do, I can like soften out this line here, but I can also like scrub out this area here into that dark. It kind of adds a little bit of interest. And then I might blur this line here a little bit, so there's not so much attention drawn to that. Just a little tip here, where you see little highlights of her hair here, just coming out. This is, again, which is why I love the Eradicator brush. I might pick a dark area here, and I can scrub it out, just to kind of give a sense that her hair has caught the light. And it kind of brings the subject and the background together, which for me is really important. Like I said, I don't want my subject to look like it's cut out of the background or the context of the painting, but to be a part of it. Another thing you can do to kind of make your, so you can see I've drawn out some little highlights here, but I can bring in the background color, and then I can put in little lines here like that, just to kind of give a sense that there's a highlight or a white hair strand going through the painting here, and it helps bring the subject and the background together. So just a little bit of negative edge painting around here into her hair, trying to complement. Just bleeding out. That kind of brings the subject and the thing together. Another handy tip. Also might also do that a little bit here on the edges. Just bringing in a continuation of color. They're small things, but they really are, at least for me, really effective. Okie dokie, so that's a couple little tips. I might just bring in some warmer yellow oranges and give allusion to some of her hair and the direction it's growing. Oops, it's focusing on this area a bit here. It's a little bit darker. I might need a little bit of greens. It's pretty dark. Some straight up burnt umber. Might throw in a little bit of the amethyst into like a mini wash here, just to build up the depth. And this bit needs to be a little bit darker still. Bleeding out. You can see some of the shadows there need to be darkened. Also in here as well. The wash color here is like a slightly green, I think. So I kind of want to use what's there to build in a sense of her hair catching the light a little bit more. You can see that this pink area here, so I might use some pinks and purples later, but just trying to give the impression of her hair moving through. Just grabbing some of these pinks. I want to keep this pink a little bit clean. It is a little purpley, so maybe I will mix it in with some little bit of amethyst. Keep the values pretty light on this. To test it out, good enough. Oh, the shadows and hair. Especially in this area here. Interesting line that kind of moves and it's breaking it up through there. You can kind of see it through here a little bit. The kind of pinky oranges in the top part of her hair here. Definitely want to bleed that out very quickly. Reserve some lines, blur out others. And so the direction of the lines that you do may seem insignificant, but it will all play a part in helping to tell the story. I want to kind of, again, bring the background and the subject together here a little bit. So I'm going to take some of this aquamarine? Oh gosh. Amazonite, thank you. Amazonite into here a little bit. Just help a couple of little well-placed triangles that are not too much will help. Again, always thinking about direction of the hair. Moving, bleeding out. Drawing a little line here. You can even use the Eradicator brush here. My best friend, one of my best friends. You can draw out, or scrub out rather. Scrub out lines. Here's an example where you see it's kind of a little bit heavy. Just scrubbing out a little highlight. adds interest, movement, adds movement and life into your backgrounds. If you want to go, here's an example. Sometimes you can even find nice little dark bits and then kind of brings in, I guess it's where who's that artist? Oh gosh. He did Starry Night. Van Gogh, yeah, he kind of think about the movement of the background, and he kind of did these like lines and circles and spirals into his paintings and kind of added that movement. This is essentially what we're creating here, or trying to do here. Kind of gives a sense of flow and movement, and you can actually even see it in the reference photo. You can see how her hair is moving. You kind of want to use these lines to create that movement in there. I think I just need to add a little bit more depth to her hair. Obviously, when you're doing this in your home studio, you can have a little bit more time to slow down and evaluate, but just want to kind of give you some of the thoughts and techniques I am using when I'm covering someone's hair. I'm just going to bring a little bit more green into here because you can see the atmosphere around her is giving that warmth. And while we're here, I might actually do a slight green wash that doesn't exist, but I do just want to bring her dress together in with the rest of the painting a bit more along this edge. It's really dark around here and I do need to capture that. I'm trying to think what color that is. It's a pretty dark green under her armpit. Might have to add with some oranges there. Seems a little bit scary. Oh, and there's some pinks as well. Pinky purples under here. I like to make my iPad work for me when I'm painting, so not afraid to move it around as I need. Maybe, and this is gonna be a little bit dark around here. Leading that into her dress, into here. And I'd say I need to just grab some, burnt orange. Oh, it might even be amethyst. Amethysty, amethyst, and burnt orange would be a good mix. This might make some room in my palette for that. Burnt orange and amethyst does make a nice neutral brown. It seems a little scary, but it's going to soften some edges in which I have inadvertently created, and then move on. Okay, so to her dress, I do want to push this back and added some sea blue black here. And I'm bringing in some of this amethyst in there, just kind of cooling off this painting or part of her dress. There we go. Just going to push that back. I'm going to mix a little bit of this ultramarine in with some amethyst here. And you know what? I think what I might do is bring in some of the Amazonite here, because it is the ultramarine dress is looking a little bit flat to me, and it just needs a bit more interest and energy. As a personal style choice, I don't like to put too much detail in what someone's wearing. Just really want to allude to it more. For me, the focal point is usually the face, but this is one of the fun parts of your painting, which for me, I like to keep loose. I do want to touch on his shoulder a little bit. You can see I was a little bit messy with the masking tape or masking fluid here, so I do kind of want to correct this. I can see some of my lines here where I kind of went over, but just want to kind of soften up around her shoulder there. Looking a little bit crazy. I'm essentially just scrubbing out some of these lines. And I will correct that later, but softening this a little bit because it's looking a little strange. But I did manage to preserve that highlight, so I am very pleased with that. Early on in my when I was learning to paint watercolor, I really felt like I always try to correct any of the errors that I made, and sometimes learning to correct your errors in your practice paintings, even to the point of overpainting, can be a really useful exercise in just giving you that confidence that when you do make errors and mistakes and gone out too hard or whatever, there's a way to fix it. Another thing to note here was just the edge of the masking fluid. It did leave a hard line, and so I don't really want that, so I'm just gonna use the Eradicator brush just to soften out a little bit of that hard line, because again, it's not a place where I want to bring attention to. I'm also going to use the Eradicator brush this side as well to just soften out some of the harder lines left by the masking fluid, and that kind of keeps the highlights, but also doesn't draw too much unwanted attention to areas I don't want attention to be in. Another way I love to use the Eradicator brush is, you can see this hard line that I didn't quite bleed out very well, and I can just soften it, especially on her face, where areas in which I might feel like, oh, I don't really want attention to be there. I can always use my Eradicator brush to soften out lines. Here I will do it again for these highlights on her cheek, or her chin, sorry. And I will go in there later and do a bit more of it. Just a helpful little tip for you there as well. Okay, what is next? Just come in a little bit. Can't help myself. Sometimes you see something and you just want to go deal with it. Okay. So what is left? Okay, the grasses. This will be fun. So using, again, we talked about breaking up the lines, breaking up disinterest, creating a sense of sorry, so hard to talk. Okay, so we're doing the grasses. You can see you want to preserve some of these highlights, but this is a big chunk of grass that I probably want to kind of, I'm going to paint into my highlight here. And I don't want to do too much, but it just helps kind of add a little bit of complexity and interest into the painting, which would have been hard to achieve without the masking fluid. So here, I'm just kind of almost perfecting these white highlights here, and just getting the clean water and bleeding out, and it just kind of adds that dimension into the grass that would have been hard to achieve. You can see this highlight here, and then it kind of, here would be an example. You got a highlight of the grass, it crosses into the knee and you can see the color, and so here I can kind of use that to my advantage and use this line and bring that grass color down here. And what I might do is I might try and tell the story so that these grasses kind of can make sense, if you will. So just trying to find negative lines or edges I can use to try and make the story of this little piece of grass moving through the painting across her knee make sense a bit more. And there. So it's not really about drawing a straight up line, but you know, using colors and edges, the edges, blended edges, using everything to tell that story. I don't want to keep these white lines completely white through this. It will, for me, it's just too hard. A bit of aquamarine, using taking advantage of the fact that watercolor mixes and plays well with each other. Grass is here a little bit cooler. I want to kind of reflect that. I'm going to mix up an Amazonite with the Serpentine here. There we go. Kind of in the shadow, so I tell a story of this blade of grass. You can see I'm putting the same color on both sides of this negative edge here, and that kind of just helps tell the story of the grass moving through. It kind of helps connect the painting to itself. can see my messy lines and adding a bit of green to these highlights. These ones seem to have caught themselves in a light, and it's like a light serpentine with a Quin gold, kind of warm colored grass. Actually, what I might do later when this is dried properly, I might get my Eradicator brush just to continue the story of this grass coming through her. But this is when you're using a little bit of creative, artistic license, if you will, to tell the story of the grass going through. You can spend a lot of time with this just to make it very convincing, but those are just some of the techniques that I will use to do that. Perhaps there's lots of lines and movement around her, but I want to bring in a little bit of movement around here as well. And what I might do to do that is, again, a little bit like what we did with her hair, and I might just add a couple of these darks. Now I can see and darks to add movement and depth to this kind of shadowy part, and I do want to push that back a bit. I can see that I think that looks like an amethyst to me with the serpentine, so I will just mix that up really quickly. And we're gonna just add some details there. You can see me continuing using a lot of negative edge and lines to tell that story. Maybe some straight up amethyst, actually. Amethyst is such a great color for darks. There you go. Just gonna bleed out some of those edges with a wet brush, but not too wet. Whoops. Oh well. And so great. So we're just pushing that back a little bit. So that's what I might do there. And as I can see, there's a lot of orangey greens just under her arm there that I want to pick up and kind of cause confusion with that amethyst. Bleed out. Throw in a bit of green. There we go. I have to get some more fresh serpentine out in just one moment. That's what I see there. Perfect. going to tip that forward because I want the pigment to be drawn down there.